Hi everybody, camellias are one of my favorite subtropical plants. They grow fantastic as landscape shrubs in Zone 7, New York. They're one of the few plants that will stay green all winter long and have this beautiful glossy subtropical foliage. So we're going to talk about what makes a camellia so special, but I'm also going to convince you that this is a great plant to grow in a container. First, what is so special about camellias? They bloom during the coldest months of the year. You have your autumn blooming camellias, which bloom starting in October and will bloom intermittently in November and December. They're great. I love the spring blooming ones, the japonicas. These species of camellia have huge flowers, so many different colors. They're so pretty. I absolutely love spring blooming camellias. And in the South, spring is January for these camellias. They'll usually start blooming in January and go through March and April. In my climate, the earliest you typically see them blooming in the landscape is March. More so, you'll see them blooming in April, and sometimes I get blooms in early May here in New York. So the benefit to growing a camellia in the landscape is, of course, they're going to get huge. And they will just look really great in a shady spot. They don't need a lot of sunshine. They actually prefer full shade. Like I said, though, I want to convince you to grow these in containers. And the biggest, most powerful thing about growing these in containers is that you get to decide where it is when it is in full bloom. Because most of the year, like 9-10 months out of a year, camellias, they're beautiful with their glossy green leaves, but they're not flowering. So you're kind of just looking at a pretty green shrub. And then when it's in bloom, it is the most eye-catching, most beautiful firework display. You want to be there when they're in bloom. So I've decided that I'm gonna put these camellias, this one's not in bloom yet, this is called Ashton's High Rise, I believe. Of course, the tag is faded. You'll have to take my word for it. I'm pretty sure that's Ashton's High Rise. This is RL Wheeler, and this one's already starting to bloom. I have lined my pathway with my camellias, so that way I don't miss a single bloom. I'm gonna reposition the camera and I'm gonna show you what I love about RL Wheeler, which is one of my favorite camellias, and why I think they make such great container plants. Okay, so let's pull out RL Wheeler. Photo montage. I got RL Wheeler when I was in South Carolina a few years ago. Saw it 20% off. It was like $15. Such a beautiful plant. I was like, I have to have it. And so it has been in a container now for about 5 years, I think. And it blooms spectacularly. I have not pruned it. I don't really fertilize it. I think I'll fertilize it in April, and that way I can get some nice lush growth. But this is just a very easy plant that does really well in containers. I have repotted it once before, but otherwise, really just low maintenance and not a problem. RL Wheeler has huge flowers. In South Carolina, it did bloom in January and February and March. Here, it starts blooming in March, and I'll get some blooms in April as well. But yeah, the leaves are huge. They're so glossy and beautiful. And I get to just put this wherever I want when it's in bloom. If I had this in the ground, I'd have to be worried about the cold damaging the flower buds. That's the biggest problem here. I really don't see camellias die during our winter, but I do see their buds get damaged during our winters. So with this, I don't have to worry, because what do I do when it gets cold out? Yes, it is outside most of a winter, but when it gets down to like 15 degrees, or if it's a really prolonged cold spell, I just send it into the garage. And it can be in the garage for a month, 2 months, it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really need any light in the winter to survive. If you brought it into the house during the winter, it would go into bloom. So if that's kind of something that you fancy, I guess you could bring it into the house during the winter also. But yeah, no, it's just such an easy plant. Maybe one day I'll put it in the landscape, but honestly, I'm enjoying it as a container plant. I think it's beautiful in a container. I love that I get to get up close and personal with the flowers, and that I get to leave it right against the door. And I actually noticed that some of the flowers were fading in the sunlight. So it's nice because I get to adjust this plant and say, okay, you know what? You want some sun. in the late spring after you're done blooming, so that way you can get some nice dark green leaves, just a little bit more sun than usual, and then I'll send you into some shade. When you're blooming, it's going to be underneath the overhang of my house, so that way the flowers don't get beat up in the rain, and so that way if we have a frost, I could bring it inside the house for the night. I don't have to worry about the flowers getting damaged. It's just an awesome plant in a container. I feel like I have done justice for keeping these plants in a container. You let me know, have I convinced you to grow a camellia in a container? Or is this the first time you're even hearing about these amazing shrubs? I hope not, because if you are, well, maybe that's pretty cool, because then I just introduced you to one of my favorite plants, and hopefully it'll become one of your favorites too. Anyway, I am gonna go. I have so much yard work to do. I love this time of the year. It is a beautiful sunny day in New York in March, and the sun is as strong now as it is in September, and I can feel it on my face, and I am loving every second of it. Bye, guys.